NutriCast.
Empower.
Claire is practicing her breathing for her upcoming yoga retreat in Bali. Has she ever done yoga before? No. But Claire worked with Empower on her savings and investment strategy. She got good at money, so she can be a little bad. Empower. Invest well, live a little. Join our 19 million customers today at empower.com.
Past performance is not indicative of future returns. Investing involves risks. You may lose money. Advisory services are provided for a fee by Empower Advisor Group, LLC, EAG, a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Om Namaste.
There's a change happening in the way we live, the way we work, the way we spend our money and make our decisions. We are evolving to be more conscious in our actions in a way that serves the world and makes it a better place. Welcome to the Ethical Evolution. The Ethical Evolution podcast is brought to you by Ethical Change Agency. I'm Bindi, I'm the founder, and my mission is to help ethical entrepreneurs and holistic healers to find their voice through spiritual coaching and podcasting. I'm honoured to bring you the stories of those who create change through healing, kindness, innovation, purpose, and spirit. Understanding that to create collective change, we need to be the change. It all begins with us. Hey, before we get into this episode, I just wanted to let you know that you can now grab my album of guided meditations. It's called Sourced by Spirit, and it's on all streaming platforms, including Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Tidal, YouTube Music, and many more. There's 11 guided meditations ranging from 4 minutes through to 10 minutes to help you reset your mind and your body at any time. Okay, now let's get on with the show. Australian-New Zealander Laurel Colless is a sustainability writer, kids science fantasy novelist, and founder of the Carbon Busters Club, a climate science adventure program for children. With over 25 years of experience in environmental business and journalism across Asia, the US, and Europe, she combines her expertise in sustainability and technology communications with her passion for education and storytelling. As an Gore Climate Reality Leader, Laurel's work spans ESG reporting, stakeholder engagement strategies, and creating new methodologies for today's youth that reflect the climate challenges of their generation. In addition to her corporate writing, Laurel is the author of the Peter Blue series, a science fantasy adventure where eco-school friends solve world problems and face off against climate demons. Her diverse career has allowed her to bring a unique voice to the intersection of sustainability, technology, and creative expression. Laurel believes the changes we make for a more sustainable life should not be punishments, but should positively impact our own health and well-being, along with the planet. Welcome, Laurel, to the Ethical Evolution.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks.
Now, you are joining us probably from the furthest point from me that I've ever had a guest, all the way up in Finland. For those people who don't know who you are and what you do, can you go ahead and tell us?
Okay, great. So I'm Laurel Colless, and I am writing books. I've created and I'm writing a series of novels, science, fantasy, adventure novels for 9 to 12-year-olds. And the mission of my project is to entertain kids while raising awareness of the climate crisis. And just to your point, to give a little bit of context about where I come from and where I hope to be going, I'm actually Australian. So we are compatriots, Cindy. I'm Australian by nationality and birth, but I grew up in New Zealand. That's where I was educated. And I was educated trained as a literary comparatist. I studied literature in New Zealand and was planning on, I majored in medieval poetry and I was planning on becoming a writer. I know, very obscure, pre-Chaucer. And then, when I graduated, I ended up just going, like many Antipodean kids do, we went off to see the rest of the world. what was going on up in the north. And so I ended up having a career in business. So 30 years in business, in corporate sustainability mostly, but in the business world, in 3 continents: Asia. I began in Japan, then in Europe, and also 6 years in the US. And I'm now, well, along the way, I met this Finnish guy who was a diplomat, and I had another hat for 20 years. I was an ambassador's spouse, so that was also very interesting to have as a side gig. And I also had 2 children, so I'm the mother of 2 great girls, and I'm also the human for a wiry-haired dachshund and a Greek rescue cat. So I have a few different hats, and we're now all together up north. My husband's retired, and we're in Helsinki. So after starting off as far south as you could be, pretty much, I'm now as far north. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It
that's
sounds
kind
like
of where I am at the moment.
Sounds like you should write a book about your life, aside from the kids' books.
Well, let's see, because I'm on a mission right now.
Yeah.
I'm really focused on the upcoming generation after sort of almost giving up on it's not that I gave up, but, the grown-up world, we have and myself included, we have so many short-term constraints when it comes to making decisions about the environment. And working in the corporate world, we really saw that, it's always quarter on growth. We have to make decisions based on short-term gains at the expense of the long-term environmental gains. It was very draining, so I pivoted eventually into this upcoming generation. And that's sort of how the books got started. So the same kind of ideas from corporate sustainability put into these fantasy worlds.
I love that.
But I don't know. I'm jumping ahead. How you?
Yeah.
What would you like to talk about?
Look, I love the way that you've taken that approach, because there's so many things that I've discovered through this show that kids never were taught. Like, we were never taught when we were kids, and we're wondering why we've got issues now in certain fields. Like there's basic life stuff that we weren't taught. So, understanding our environment and our climate and how to take care of it is one of those things. And that the song says, we believe the children are our future, and that really they are, aren't they? Like, this is where we can make true change in the future and keep our earth together a little bit longer.
Yeah, I agree. Although, we still need to, I think as adults, we're certainly comparable. It's not that we need to pass on the responsibility. It's more that we have to work with, I know that's what you're saying. We have to work with, so if you're a parent or a caregiver, teacher, if you have children, everyone has a child in their life, even if you're not a parent or grandparent, you're a caregiver, or you have children that are sort of in your purview. I think, now's the time to do whatever we can to empower them, educate them, and also make them feel like they can be part of the solution. Because one of the things, I started this project when my own children were of the age of my readers. That's one of my books. I was, they were 9 and 11. And now they're 18 and 20, which gives you an idea of how long I've been sort of getting this off the ground. I'm on the 3rd book now. But they were getting very upset about the things that they were hearing about, particularly deforestation and, big extreme weather attacks. We were living around the world. As you know, Bindi, we see, if you open any newspaper or listen to any news podcast or however you take your news, there's nearly every day something somewhere that is clearly anthropogenic climate change in action. Here in Finland, in Europe, we had the Spanish floods just less than a month ago. That's a really good example. It was right here in our neighborhood, and one village in Spain experienced 1 year's worth of rainfall during an 8-hour period.
That's incredible.
And, obviously, the environment couldn't cope, the infrastructure couldn't cope, total destruction and, terrible loss of life and livelihood. So, you have the fires in Sydney in 2021. You have heat waves now, I hear, in your corner of the world, and obviously droughts. Drought is just, and the rainforests in Amazon. When my kids were hearing that I think it was, I don't remember the statistics in those days, but every minute an area of forest the size of a soccer field was disappearing and this kind of stuff, and they're like, oh no. And I can remember my daughter Julia crying at night at bedtime saying, what are we going to do? And that's actually got a name now. I mean, it's being called eco-anxiety, and it really is a thing.
I have a real world example for you, Laurel. Here where I am, I'm in southeast Queensland, and just up the road from me, I saw literally 2-3 soccer fields worth of trees cleared that have been there for 20, 30 years that I know of. And just a couple metres up the road is a sign, koalas crossing. And I just gone, are you serious? Like, where are they going to go now? And where I live, like the road that comes in here, of an afternoon, I see kangaroos on the hill and I'm like, oh, yeah, they're still here. It's great. And then, more development comes in. I'm like, where are they going to go now? Like, they used to be in my front yard when I moved here, and now you rarely see them. So it's like we're pushing them out, like for development, and for what? Like we've got to stop at some point.
And it's short-term profit. And it's catching up with us. It's catching up with us very fast. And I'm all in favor. I mean, that story you just told me makes me cry, not just children. It's heart-wrenching. Yeah. Okay, but I'm not going to cry on your show, Cindy. But with this, I've worked in business, and I think that in the end, business are going to be a big part of the solution. And everyone in a company is a human being. We're all, we're individuals. We have children. We work in a company, but we also have so many other hats. So I feel like, well, actually, I have decided that I'm going to be hopeful about the climate crisis, and that I'm going to, I don't know if I can share my theory with you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Your listeners.
Yeah.
The climate crisis sort of crept up on us. If you know your history, we're looking at like 1,000 years of relatively stable temperatures right up until about the 1880s. This is common knowledge. The climate crisis has been compared to the hockey stick graph. The hockey stick graph where I know you're in a cricket playing nation, and I used to love cricket, but I'm now in a hockey country. So the hockey stick is this kind of, you've got imagine your hockey stick laying down on the table.
Yep.
That's how you make the graph, with the handle going flat and then the blade coming up. So the way we came into the crisis was 1,000 years of relatively stable temperatures, your hockey stick handle, and then around the 1880s with the Industrial Revolution. It was a great age of discovery and learning, but it was also a huge upsurge in the amount of fossil fuel that we were using. So it's a no-brainer. We saw this spike, and now from the sort of 80s, 90s, and the 2000s, we're getting this year-on-year, indisputable year-on-year average rise in global temperatures. I think it's nearly every year, bar one in the last decade, has been a record breaker. And that's the direction we're going. So we've seen this. So I've decided, I mean, if you look at the numbers, and if you look at Paris targets and the fact that we're nowhere near achieving them, if you look at the numbers, you could say we're already fried.
Yeah.
But we can't do that, because, we have to get up every day. We're human beings. We have to be hopeful. And we have children in the world who are hopeful with us, and who naturally are. I think when I speak to children about the crisis, they can't wait to get started. Like, let's do something. What are we going to do? How are we going to fix this? So I've decided we'll go with this hockey stick approach when it comes to solving the crisis. So if you think of if you think of the handle now, we're in this so-called period where we're addressing the crisis. I was living in Japan in 97 when they had the Kyoto conference. So the Kyoto conference was really, it came sort of on from, it was like a COP number 3.
Yep.
So it followed on from the Earth Summit, and I think one other, I don't remember where, but I was living in Japan and I was so excited. There were nearly 200 countries come together to Japan to solve the climate crisis. So that was a kind of kickoff then, and the protocol was put in place, which then pretty much everyone was unable to achieve. So 2015, we came with our, don't get me wrong, I think it's already a miracle that we get that many countries together.
Yeah.
You know, we just had COP29 in Azerbaijan, and there are plenty of reasons to criticize it, not least 190 plus countries all flying with their entourages using fossil fuel to get there. However, it is a miracle that we can even do that and have a conversation. So that gives me hope. So we're going along in this kind of flat, we're addressing the crisis, we're setting up ambitious targets, 2015 and Paris targets. There's plenty of reason to be hopeful in the sense that we've set as a world, nearly 200 countries, we've said we want to be by 2050 zero net carbon. And we have all the technologies there. Do we have the will? That's the thing that's missing. But I feel like, Bindi, when I watched the way we addressed the pandemic, I was so innovated when I saw, because part of the problem now is when you're out recycling your cans, you don't necessarily see a link between, fixing the crisis and your everyday actions. If you were in a pandemic, as we were, and you saw friends and relatives just dying around you, you saw businesses imploding, you saw supply chains melting down across the world, and people really in trouble financially and health-wise. It was a very terrible time, but on some level, weren't you a little uplifted when you saw that everyone rallied, business, government, everyone rallied for the vaccine? Money was just pumped into it, and speed, even, we don't want to talk about politics, but even Donald Trump, he rallied. I would give him some credit for that. He really pushed. There was a strong business-minded approach, and within 1 year we had a vaccine.
Yeah.
As a world.
Yeah.
So I will argue that when we finally get, I argue now we're at the tipping point, but when we get to the tipping point that enough people, enough climate deniers really see it right in their own backyard and really understand that it's now or never we have to scramble. I think we're going to scramble and we're going to go up that blade.
Yeah.
And as a world, it's going to be very uplifting. We're going to come together as a world and across the sectors. All the NGOs will start working with the governments and with business. Business knows how to do things quickly and how to pump money into the right technologies to get something done if they have the will. And I think there is going to be the will when we finally see it the way we did with the pandemic. So I get off my soapbox now. But anyway, why not be hopeful, right? What else have we got?
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. Like what we saw in the pandemic, like the way people were able to bring forth change so quickly, like if we give this the same urgency and the same level of importance, like it's a life or death thing, whether you want to believe it or not. How can we make people understand how urgent this crisis is?
Well, I think, unfortunately, it does begin with governments. We've just had COP29 and fossil fuel subsidies are still not allowed to be on the table. I don't want to get too heavy and into politics, but without a fossil fuel without a discussion about suspending fossil fuel subsidies, I feel like, it's very hard to at least to look at what was discussed in COP28, where, we as a world, we agreed to start, I can't remember the exact language in the end, but we agreed to start moving away from fossil fuels. So that is really at the core of all of this, because, I drive a car, not always. I take public transport as much as possible, but, I'm not an extremist. I'm driving a car and I put gas in it because it's available. But at least here in Finland, we're paying, I think if I translate from euros, I can't do it in Australian dollars, but in US dollars, it's about $10 a gallon, which the Americans would just fall over backwards. Because we are at least we're putting a heavy tax on gasoline here in Finland. And that money is going into subsidized renewable energy and, research. But also I think when you see children standing up, when you see your own kids standing up, still on your question, when you see your kids calling you out, that's too much for most people to bear. And that's where this eco-anxiety is really stemming from. When children hear one thing, maybe at school or they see a news report, even they read something on TikTok about the environment, and then they see that their own parents are gas guzzling, or they go to school and nobody's talking about it. And why aren't we trying to fix this? They get scared.
It just blows my mind.
There's a wonderful thing happening, at least in Europe. I don't know, maybe in Australia. I know with the Greta Thunberg effect, there was the school strikes. But there's also another thing which I just love, and that is children making lawsuits against the establishment. It's in the US at state level, there have been quite a number. And of course they have NGOs and they have grown-ups around them. But it's basically there's one case that's been going now for a number of years called Juliana versus the US, and it's just gone to the Supreme Court. And I think actually they've ruled against it now, but a 15-year-old at the podium, standing up to power and saying, the fossil fuel industry and the decisions that are being made are contrary to what we know as fact. It's bad for our health and it's bad for the long-term health of the world, of our environment. I mean, that is so big. Most of these cases, they don't go forward, but when kids see other kids up there in the legislative saying, we're going to hold you accountable, I think they get empowered by that. And I think more kids should just start doing that because they're right.
Absolutely.
They're in the right, aren't they?
I don't know about you, but I think kids nowadays, they're much more conscious than we were. Like, they're more aware of these kind of social issues and just, things like inclusivity and, like just being a decent human, more so than what we grew up with. That's what it feels like to me because, like, my niece and nephew, I see it in them and I'm like, we were never like this. So there is hope. Like you say, there is hope for us. And people listening, they're probably going, look, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do, Laurel. You can tell me it's a crisis. There's nothing I can do. But there is, isn't there? There's every single one of us can make a change today. No matter how small it is, just start. Start today.
Yeah, and I think when you do start, to anyone listening, you'll start to feel great. And bring your kids along with you. There's no kind of blanket, like if someone says to me, give me 3 things I could just start doing today. It doesn't really work like that because you have to think about, where do I have agency? What can I do that really fits with my lifestyle? And by the way, it doesn't have to be a punishment.
No.
I mean, have a look at your impacts, look at your lifestyle and see what you could change that's going to be not to your detriment. It's not like the government wants to take away my car or I'm not allowed to eat my steak. Think about the things that you enjoy doing. Think about the things that you could change. If you're flying a lot, maybe you're taking 3 holidays a year on an airplane. Maybe you could switch to taking just 1 holiday a year on an airplane. It's not like I may never fly on an airplane or I'm culpable. It's more if you have the wherewithal to run for office, I mean, have a career change. If you're that kind of person, go and run for office and get to work at the front lines. If you're a writer like me, so I've circled back to writing now, try to write books and talk about them and get out as much as you can, like I'm doing now. That's something I'm doing. It could be just something as simple as I take my car 5 times a week to work. I'm going to start going 3 times a week in the car and twice on public transport. But of course, everything has to work with you. You need infrastructure. You need to live in a place where you have public transport that enables you to make those kinds of decisions. Some people don't. So I've heard about, I just heard last week on the BBC about an amazing sounding woman in, I don't remember which African nation, I'm afraid, but somewhere where forest is disappearing, and she's a dentist. And she started offering her clients free dental care in return for them going out to plant trees.
Wow.
I just thought those kinds of initiatives, which gives you an idea, like the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Try to think of something original. If you're working, if your kids, for example, are in a sports team or in some kind of group, even a study group or a church group, try to think of ways that you can add like a sustainability layer to that. Like maybe you're going to do a zero net energy sports tournament, or you're going to try for it, and then people, when they get to the tournament, they have to get there somehow using renewable energy or walking or cycling. And then when you're there, work with technology, see if you can get some solar equipment, maybe for some lighting, or just, anything you can think of, and involve the children. And then they feel empowered and they get excited, and then share it on your socials and have signage, this is what we're doing. We're saving water, or we're just doing, there are so many things, and it's all out there. You can measure your carbon footprint online rather easily and look for ideas that are suitable for the country you're living in and the kind of environment you have.
Yeah.
And then just empower your kids and get going, and then have fun. And if you are, for example, cycling to work twice a week, you'll probably notice a health difference. You might start even to lose a few pounds if that was something you were thinking about. So, look for the upside. There's plenty of upside.
Absolutely.
If there's no downside anyway. And also there's no downside to making any of these large sort of clean tech investments, even if the climate change were to be a hoax. I mean, we know it's not, that we have 99.9% of the world's scientists with peer-reviewed studies to say it's not. But even if it was, investing in clean tech and getting rid of fossil fuels and just generally cleaning up our lifestyle, there's no downside to that, is there, Bindi?
No. And look, I've had so many people on this show who demonstrate that exactly, When I started this, nearly 6 years ago, one of the things I used to say often was, what I do today impacts your tomorrow. So the fact that you're in Finland and I'm here in Brisbane, we're on the same planet, we all impact each other. So we got to do this together, and we've all got to play our part. And, we've had examples on this show just making ethical buying decisions, and also looking at the supply chain in those. Are they ethical? Are they actually supporting the environment and the people in those areas that are impacted? It could be as simple as, being conscious about what you purchase and what it gives back. Does it give back to the environment? Does it plant a tree?
Yeah.
Does it offset carbon? Just think about the decisions you make, and you can actually make change with your dollar. You don't have to do anything difficult and have a really hard life. You can actually make an impact without leaving your couch.
I think you can argue, and I think you do in your tagline to this show,
yes,
that basically any decision you make, including a purchasing decision, is basically a vote.
Yep.
For the kind of world that you hope to live in the future.
And the change begins with us. Any change we want to make, it starts with us. So it's the exact same thing with the climate, right? If we want to turn this around, have it a bit longer, it starts with us.
And we can have an impact. And I was surprised because, as I said earlier, I had this feeling that it's all going to come down to corporations. I mean, because they are the ones, as I said, that can if they have the will finally and work with their value chains, supply chains, they can do things quickly and they can pump money and get really quick results. If we really get to the crisis point where the world's imploding, then, there's no point having a product you want to sell if the society, business can't survive in a society that's failed. So eventually business will scramble. But I read in the IPCC report, that's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, something that surprised me recently, and that is that 42% of the solution, according to this report, should come from individuals. This is in the context of reaching zero net emissions by 2050.
Wow.
So, and I'm thinking, whoa. But of course, why would a corporation change if we're all complicit and we continue going along, buying our plastic and our rubbish and our, with our overconsumption. I'm oversimplifying it, but I was actually, on the one hand, I was terrified to read that it's going to be up to 42% of the solution is going to be up to individuals. But then again, I think we should take stock of that.
And that's why we have conversations like this. It's to become conscious and educate ourselves that, we can make a change. And it just starts with a little bit. And if we all do that, then that's just going to amplify and ripple effect. And if we can continue to grow on that, it's all going to make a change. I don't know about that 42%, but, we can all make a difference if we just think a little before we take action. And, it can make a huge impact to the environment if we just keep giving back instead of taking away all the time.
Right, exactly. And that comes out in some of my storytelling, particularly the overconsumption. So in the books, I didn't want to write, my goal was to raise awareness of the climate crisis through fiction for children, but I didn't want to write realism because, well, first of all, I wanted to entertain and, it's kind of boring. Realism is boring. extreme weather events. And depressing and even scary. But what I decided to do was to create these monsters. So they're kind of weather monsters. So we have overconsumption equals. So these weather monsters are birthed out of garbage dumps. At least some of them are. They come from human waste. They come from all kinds of, for example, in the book, which is just published, which is set in the sea and is raising awareness on plastic pollution, the monster, the sort of antagonist, because, climate change is basically the villain of my stories, but I didn't want to spell it out too much. So I have this antagonist, which is a sea beast. And this sea beast is, stay with me, this sea beast is a kind of, so I'm drawing on mythologies that children would somehow recognize. So it's a kind of biblical Leviathan style sea beast. But it operates a little bit like the Greek mythology. If any of your listeners have read Homer's Odysseus, the famous Charybdis, which there's Scylla and Charybdis that kind of trap the ships. And Charybdis actually sucks in water and then spews it out and makes these whirlpools that sucks the boats down. So this monster behaves like that. But basically it's spewing out garbage, water, and plastic pollution. But, they're still real. It's a school series of real kids every day. So I would have liked to have called the genre of the books, magical realism, because there's this realistic world that is like a version of our world. And you have these kids in a secret school for eco. So it's kids from everywhere. So every reader can see themselves in one of the kids. It's the top kind of secret eco school for kids around the world to come to this island in the south of England, which is a kind of Avalon style island. So there's some Arthurian legends going on there as well. My main protagonist is a kind of boy Arthur. Well, he is, in my heart, he's the boy Arthur, in the same way that Harry Potter was, again, the boy Arthur from T.H. White's novel, My Peter Blue, in the series. This Peter Blue, he is there's a kind of character who's a bit like a Merlin, So there's a kind of Harry Potter Dumbledore thing going on with Peter Blue and Tolan, who's the forest mentor. I strayed from the point a bit, but I wanted to have this fantastical overlay of these monsters, which I named anthrogs, to kind of make the point so kids could still be scared about the climate crisis, but they could sort of be scared in their jammies in the safety of their bedroom reading the stories. But these monsters do show up as extreme weather attacks in many cases. So killer storms, wildfires. In book 2, the Renegale tales. So these are renegales. The renegales are these rogue winds that can destroy like a whole town in one go. So, I'm experimenting with overconsumption equals warming world equals higher probability of extreme weather, and these are the monsters. And I invented these monsters actually when we were living in Greece. My husband was on a posting there, and for the first time in my life, I couldn't work. So I pivoted out of the corporate community anyway, by force, practically speaking. And I decided I wanted these monsters to have a name, not just a word or a sound. I wanted them to have a name with a meaning. So I developed I was learning early stage Greek, and the word anthropos, which we all know, which means mankind, human, anthropos. We hear it in anthropology, study of humans. We hear it in anthropogenic climate change caused by humans. And we also hear it in the word anthropocentric, which is another very common one when it comes. So humans putting themselves at the center of everything, and becoming, putting themselves ahead of the environment and the rest of the animal kingdom and plant kingdom. So I chose this suffix anthropos, anthro, and I added it together with the word hog. And that's, again, no offense to pigs, because pigs, like all animals, they usually, in the wild at least, they take what they need. But I made the word anthrog, and I thought it was a really fitting name for these kind of class of demons or monsters that go into my books. So it's basically to do with humans hogging more than their share. And we see the result.
That's fascinating. And
I just got started on my books because I'm so close to them. I'm writing every day.
now I'm guessing, if people want to get their hands on one of the books for their kids and check them out, are they on like platforms like Amazon, things like that? Where can they go?
Yeah, anywhere where you get online books. And also they're part of a global distribution, Ingram Spark, so you can order them through your local bookstore.
Oh, cool.
Very easily.
Yeah.
Just with the ISBN number. You can find everything you need to know at my website, which is laurelcolles.com. No period.
Yep.
Laurel Colless, no space.com. But I've spoken on a few podcasts, and I'm talking here and there to groups, and I'm marketing the books because I have to. I want to market the books. But for me, there's a little bit of a disconnect. I'm not going to call it hypocrisy, because I don't think that the children's book industry is going to be the game changer when it comes to addressing climate change. But I am talking about overconsumption, and then at the same time I'm trying to sell books so that I can keep doing this wonderful thing, working with young people. But I guess my sweet spot would be if your listeners would find a way to alert either their local library or the school libraries of their children to have them bring the books in there. That, to me, that's like a dream come true, because I can be circular, I can be part of the solution.
Yes.
And I can still sell some books. I don't know how old your listeners are, but there was a famous example of this kind of hypocrisy with Patagonia, the global outdoor weather. One jacket is very expensive.
Yeah.
They are doing a lot on climate, and they position themselves as sustainability personified. They had a fantastic ad campaign about 10 years ago on Black Friday, where they had a big spread in the New York Times with one of their jackets, and then the tagline was, "Do not buy this jacket." And it's like, what? And it was a way of just getting people's attention and saying, yes, we want to sell these jackets, but don't buy more than you need, and think about, where things come from. And going back to your idea, I mean, the tagline for your show, think about what you're buying and why, and do you need it? And then, look at the kind of supply chain and the people that are selling the product. So, it was a kind of a look at our hypocrisy, and we're owning it, but at the same time, let's all think together. So it was, I started to think, well, I'm trying to sell books about raising awareness on overconsumption.
Yeah.
So I do have an ebook as well.
Yeah, and we'll post a link in the show notes so that people can grab the books and also recommend them to the libraries.
Yes, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
With this show, can I tell you the decisions that I've changed in terms of purchasing have been incredible. Like right down to the coffee I drink every day, which is ethical. It's all of that. The toilet paper I use, like all of these kind of things. And I have been doing that for years. So little me alone here doing just simple changes
good,
like that.
Right?
Yeah, like
you feel good about it.
And every time you use it, you don't feel like you're ruining the planet. You're actually giving something back. There's also certain, jewelry lines where you buy like a bracelet, they plant a tree. Look out for those kind of things. There's lots of people now who are setting up sustainable startups that actually have a way of giving back and being ethical in some way. And that was the reason why I started this show, was like, let's do more of this. Let's have the conversation. Let's teach ourselves. Let's make a change, whatever it takes. And you're doing it, Laurel.
Well done, you.
You're doing it.
Well done, you.
But
and it makes you feel good. So, I mean, the advice I would give to any young person now who wants to start a business, I mean, don't just start selling cheap plastic from China because you can. Sure, you can find a market for it, but look for something that really resonates. Look for something. Find the heart in a project.
Yep.
And then get to work on it, and it'll be so much more fulfilling and enlivening, and arguably so much more successful. And you'll be adding value every day when you get up to go to sell your widget or to provide your service.
I'm also seeing a trend.
There are so many amazing services. I don't know how it's going in Australia. I haven't been back for a while, but here in Finland, for example, we have this what we call product as a service.
Yep.
So you'd be familiar with that, with maybe bicycles, that you just ride your bike and then park it up. It's part of this kind of thing. But now they have, and of course we have libraries. Libraries are having a revival now, a kind of new dawn. But there's clothing libraries here. They don't actually call them that, but I just think of them that. So this kind of circular lease, product leasing, where you go and get dressed at this kind of store, and that was really nice fashion. Like you can go and get dressed for work, and you keep the clothes for 2 weeks, and then you clean them and return them. And the clothes are often donated by, good brands. They want to be part of it. And so you can actually turn up looking really smart. And instead of having to buy it, well, it's obvious, don't buy it. When I think of all the women, just say in this city alone, with closets stuffed full of clothes, and you can only wear one at a time, one outfit at a time, right? So I feel like that kind of direction, that's a really smart direction to go in, where we can all still feel good about what we wear, but, not to have overconsumption.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot on this show as well. But you know what, Laurel, I'm seeing a trend, particularly when it comes to children's books. They're changing the way they talk to kids. With what you're doing. Also, another friend of mine that's been on this show, Seth, in the States, he actually writes books for kids that are about, different relationships that aren't a mum and dad. There might be two mums, there might be two dads, they might have had a divorce, these kind of things. So teaching kids about different kinds of perspectives in life instead of, whatever the vanilla is that everybody else has been delivered,
Well said.
And
and that's because literacy rates among children are really plummeting, unfortunately. And I think I read something in The Guardian, the UK Guardian, not long ago, where there was a big sweeping study across the UK where they found, this is a really scary number, 34%, only 34% of 8 to 18-year-olds who were surveyed said that they read for pleasure now.
Wow.
Yeah, which was really sad. But part of the problem is that kids don't see themselves, especially the younger kids. So in the age group that I'm looking at, they don't see themselves necessarily in the books. And so it's hard to identify. So first of all, I made a point, boys are also the ones that are the lowest. I don't remember the percentage for boys, but I made my protagonist a boy because my mother was a school teacher, my brother's a school teacher and educator, and they're telling me, if you're going to write, make sure you've got boys. You can have strong girls. I've got plenty of strong girls, but my main protagonist is a boy, and I've made sure that physically they can see themselves. I've got people from everywhere in the world, as I said, but also, mentally, the kind of different kinds of personalities. And then, as you said, people coming from different backgrounds, and also the emotional quotient, looking at EQ. That's something that schools, I think, or education systems are just starting to think more about, probably in Australia as well.
Yeah.
About, not just about, as we know, and not just about the IQ, but also the EQ, and all the things that children are having to deal with.
And that's where we get into things like mental health, isn't it?
That's a really good point that you make. Yeah.
Wow. Laurel, I could talk about this stuff all day. I really could. But you've already given us your website, and we're going to share that in the show notes. Now,
thank you.
I have the last big question for you, and I think I know what the answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What's the change you'd like to see in the world, and how can we bring it to life?
That's a very big question. Since we've spoken so much about climate change, I'm going to pounce on the other big scourge, which is plastic pollution. Because I feel like that one is so doable. The plastic, scientists invented plastic, early in the middle of the last century. And I think if we had a conversation with nature about whether we should do it or not, we would have curtailed. But it was just so convenient, and it was so easy and cheap to produce in mass volumes. So I feel like that is something that manageable, that everyone could get together and solve. And if you go anywhere, for example, when I lived in Greece, we were going in a hydrofoil one day on a trip, and the whole thing broke down because of one plastic bag in the propeller of this massive hydrofoil. The ocean is full of plastic. Our food is now full of plastic. The food chain is full of plastic. Microplastics are everywhere on our clothes, in our metabolism. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's work on that as well. But I don't really want to finish on a negative note, but there is a statistic out there from a reputable Ellen MacArthur Foundation that says by 2050, the way we're going to have more plastic than fish in the oceans, in the world's oceans.
Wow.
I didn't want to just drop that on you. But let's just try to cut down. I'm a moderate. I'm a mother. I go to the supermarket. Quite often I have to buy plastic. But I'm finding good places anyway to have it disposed of responsibly or recycled. It's very difficult to recycle plastic, though. So if we could if everyone today would just cut down on their plastic or find their own agency to deal with that problem, I think we'd be on a good track.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's small changes or decisions we could make there to just accelerate that along, I think. And we can all be part of that.
And remember that when it comes to making changes for the climate, it's not a punishment.
No.
It's actually, it's something that you can use to promote well-being, even your own economy. So
yeah. 90%.
Think of it as a reward.
Yeah. 90% of the time, the good decisions that you make around these things actually are better for you as well. They're actually going to make you healthier, happier.
That's really important to remember. It's
Yeah.
not a punishment or something that, is going to bring you down. There's no downside. It's all up.
Laurel,
you're making me want to rush out and go and do something sustainable.
I hope everybody else who's listening does, because that's the whole point of this. So, Laurel, I have loved every single minute with you. Thank you so much for being a part of the Ethical Evolution.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Ethical Evolution podcast. If you're ready to be the change and would love to work with me on finding your voice through spiritual coaching or creating your own podcast with impact, visit ethicalchangeagency.com. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's growing every day with great content and highlights you may not have heard on the podcast. In addition, please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or Apple, and why not leave a 5-star review? If you're not following me on social media, you can find me at Ethical Change Agency on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook and YouTube, and at DJ Bindi on TikTok and Instagram.
For those of you who dream of a world where music and podcasts live together in perfect harmony, now, for the first time, Electrocast gives you a magical compilation, Pod Till You Drop, Volume 1, where we give you the best in tunes and the best in podcasts. Feast your ears and hear the culture. Available now wherever you listen to music.
Hi everyone, I'm Geraldine Glass, a leader in the field of music as medicine, and I'm excited to share with you my newest release of healing sound, Pentatonic Visions, with Chris Scholler and Electrocast Records. Immerse yourself in ethereal realms where the harmonies of nature, tribal rhythms, and soundscapes blend with the crystal singing bowls. It's out now, streaming on all platforms.
Electrocast.